My grandmother gave my daughter a sapphire ring for her 15th birthday. My parents took it out of her box while she was at summer camp and replaced the stone with a cheap cubic zirconia. They did this to sell it and pay for my brother's honeymoon. When my grandmother noticed this, she smiled and said, "The ring was..." My parents turned pale. My parents stole a sapphire ring from their own granddaughter and replaced it with a worthless fake while she was away at summer camp. They didn't do it out of desperation. They didn't do it for survival. They did it to pay for my brother's honeymoon in Costa Rica. I didn't know right away, but when I found out, I couldn't believe how far they were willing to go. The ring wasn't just some shiny piece of jewelry. It had been in our family for over a century. Dark blue, set in antique gold, handed down from mother to daughter, generation after generation. My grandmother gave it to Sophia, my daughter, on her 15th birthday. I still remember that moment. Sophia had tears in her eyes. She understood what it meant. That's the kind of kid she is. Thoughtful, careful, a little old-fashioned. My grandmother said something that day, and now I can't stop thinking about it. She held Sophia's hand and said, "This ring only belongs to the one who can carry its weight." I should have known something was coming. Sophia left for a 3-week summer music program in Colorado in June. Before she left, she put the ring in the little satin-lined jewelry box on her desk. She didn't want to lose it at camp. She even made me promise to keep an eye on it. 2 days after she left, my parents showed up uninvited. Said they were in the neighborhood. My mom went into Sophia's room while I was doing dishes. She said she was looking for an old book she thought she left there last time. A week later, they told me they were flying to Florida for a last-minute trip. Thought it was strange. They always made a show of being tight with money. My dad's been retired for years, and my mom hasn't worked since before my brother graduated college. When I asked how they could afford a vacation, my mom just smiled and said my brother had taken care of everything. Except he hadn't. Sophia came back in July. On the morning of my grandmother's birthday, she got dressed in a floral skirt and wore the sapphire ring. She asked me to help zip up the back of her dress, and I remember glancing at her hand and thinking something was off. The stone looked dull, like it had no depth. But I said nothing. We arrived at Grandma's around noon. Everyone was there. My aunts, my cousins, my parents, even my brother and his new wife. They just returned from their honeymoon, all tanned and smiling like their lives were perfect. Sophia was standing near the window when my grandmother noticed the ring. She got quiet, walked over, took Sophia's hand gently. She tapped the stone with her nail just once. Looked at it, looked at me, looked at my parents. Then she said it. The ring was real. Her voice was calm but cold. And now the stone is fake. Everyone at the table went silent. My father didn't even blink. My mother looked like she'd been caught shoplifting. Then my grandmother asked, "How am I supposed to understand this?" Nobody answered her. My parents looked at the floor. She turned her back on them and sat down. Said nothing else. But I could tell she wasn't finished. I just didn't know what she was about to do next would blow everything apart. Nobody said a word for the rest of lunch. We sat there pretending nothing had happened, pushing food around our plates while my grandmother kept glancing at Sophia's hand like it was a loaded weapon. My parents were silent. My mother's face stayed frozen in that weird half-smile she uses when she knows she's screwed but wants to pretend she's not. After we left, I confronted them in the driveway. I didn't even ask. I just said, "You took the ring." My mom didn't deny it. She said they were going to put it back. That they had plans to replace the stone after things settled down. My dad just stood there behind her like a statue. I asked what could possibly justify stealing from their granddaughter. That's when she said it. "Your brother deserved a nice honeymoon. After everything he's been through." I stared at her. My brother? The same brother who's been spoiled since birth? The one who crashed 2 cars my dad paid for and never once held a job for more than 6 months? They sold the sapphire to a jeweler my dad knew through some golf buddy. Said it fetched enough to cover the resort flights and a little extra for excursions. I went home and didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying it. The quiet at the lunch table. My grandmother's voice. The way my parents acted like it was some minor inconvenience. Like they borrowed a lawn chair and forgot to return it. The next morning I drove to my grandmother's house. Sophia was still asleep. I didn't tell her anything yet. Grandma was in her garden watering the hydrangeas. I told her everything. Every detail. How they'd sold it, why they did it, how they didn't even plan to tell anyone. She listened. Said nothing for a long time. Then she asked one question. Do they think I'm dead already? That's when I realized. She had known something like this would happen. Maybe not exactly this, but close enough. Then she went inside, brought out a folded envelope, handed it to me. Inside was the original certification for the ring. Purchase date, family history, estimated value. Her handwriting was scrawled in the corner. If anything ever happens to this, it wasn't by accident. She had been ready. That night she called a family meeting. Said it was important and wouldn't take long. Told everyone to come. No excuses. She even asked my brother and his new wife to be there. My parents arrived first, pretending everything was normal. My mom even brought a pie. Sophia sat beside me, still clueless. I told her we'd talk after. My grandmother waited until everyone was seated. Then she looked at Sophia's hand. Told her to take the ring off and give it to her. Sophia hesitated but did it. Grandma turned the stone toward the light. Let it catch. Let everyone see what was missing. The soul of it. The depth. Then she placed it gently on the table and said, "This is no longer what it was." And she looked at my parents. "But neither are you." No one breathed. My dad opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "You stole from a child. You sold your family's legacy so your son could take pictures on a beach and drink from pineapples." My brother's face turned red. He tried to speak, but she ignored him. Then she looked at me. "I gave it to Sophia because I knew what you were. I just didn't think you'd be this careless." And to my parents, "You don't live here anymore." That's when things started spiraling. My mother laughed when my grandmother said it. Not a nervous laugh. An actual laugh, like she thought this was all some dramatic performance that would end with forgiveness and cake. "You don't mean that," she said. "We've lived here for 20 years. My grandmother nodded. "I know." Then she reached under the table and pulled out a folder. Thick. Organized. Tabs sticking out. She slid it across the table toward my parents. The house deed. Still in her name. Always had been. She never transferred it. She let them live there because they were family. Because she trusted them. That trust was gone now. My dad finally spoke. He said they could explain. That it wasn't theft, it was borrowing. That they planned to replace the stone once my brother got back on his feet. My grandmother looked at him and said, "You sold something that didn't belong to you. That's not borrowing." My brother tried to jump in. He said he never asked for this. That he didn't even know where the money came from. His wife looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. She kept whispering that she thought his parents had saved for years. My grandmother turned to him and said, "Whether you asked or not doesn't matter. You benefited. And you didn't ask questions." Then she said something that hit everyone hard. "I gave that ring away because I wanted to see who would protect it." She looked at me when she said that. Then at Sophia. My mother started crying. Real crying this time. She said they were being punished too harshly. That family doesn't do this to family. That mistakes happen. My grandmother didn't raise her voice. She said family also doesn't steal from children. She told them they had 30 days. Not to apologize. Not to negotiate. 30 days to move out. After that she would change the locks. My dad went quiet. My mom kept talking but no one listened anymore. When we left, Sophia asked me in the car why everyone was so upset. That's when I told her. I told her everything. She didn't cry. She just got very still and asked one question. Did they think I wouldn't notice? That question broke something in me. The next day my parents started calling. Then texting. Then showing up unannounced. They said my grandmother was being manipulated by me. That I was turning her against them. They told extended family their version of the story. Some believed them. Some didn't. My grandmother didn't respond to any of it. Instead she did something none of us expected. She went to the jeweler. And she didn't go alone. I went with her. My grandmother called me early that morning and told me to meet her outside the old downtown jewelry shop. The one with the green awning and gold lettering that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. She was wearing the same coat she wore to funerals. Her walking cane tapped once with every step, steady like a warning. I didn't know what she planned to do. I thought maybe she just wanted to ask questions. Maybe confirm where the stone had gone, get some paperwork. I was wrong. The jeweler, a guy named Harland, recognized her the second we walked in. He didn't smile. Didn't offer her a seat. Just said her name like a question. She opened her purse and pulled out a photo of the original ring. High resolution. Taken years ago before she gave it to Sophia. The color of the sapphire in that image had a depth you could fall into. Harland barely glanced at it before sighing and saying he didn't remember. That was a mistake. My grandmother didn't argue. She just took another envelope from her bag. This one thinner than the one she'd handed me days earlier. She laid it on the counter. Inside were printed screenshots from my mother's phone. Text she'd sent my father, forwarded to me in a panic after I told her I was done protecting them. One of them had the jeweler's name, the price, and a date. I watched Harlan's whole body go rigid. She leaned a little closer and said, "You have 24 hours to tell me who you sold it to. Otherwise, I go to the police and tell them you knowingly bought stolen property from my daughter and helped cover it up." He started stammering, trying to explain he hadn't known it was stolen. That she hadn't said anything. That he just assumed. My grandmother cut him off. He said, "You assumed wrong. Now you fix it." We left without waiting for more. By the time we got back to her house, there was a voicemail. Harland had called in a favor. The buyer had been a private collector in New Jersey. A retired surgeon who specialized in vintage estate pieces. Harland offered to contact him. Said he could try to buy it back discreetly, for a price. My grandmother said she'd pay double what he sold it for. No hesitation. No pause. That night I told Sophia what was happening. I told her the Real stone might be coming home. She didn't cry. She said, "I don't want them near me ever again." I promised her they wouldn't be. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. Because when my parents found out what my grandmother was doing, trying to buy the stone back, they lost it. They showed up the next day banging on her front door. And for the first time in my life I saw my grandmother furious. They came without warning. My mother and father standing on my grandmother's porch like they had any right to be there after everything. My mom was already yelling before the screen door even opened. Accusing her of turning the family against them, of destroying everything over a ring. She wasn't yelling because she was sorry. She was yelling because she'd lost control. My grandmother didn't open the door all the way. Just stood behind it and told them to leave. That only made it worse. My dad stepped forward, loud now, saying they were being treated like criminals for one mistake. That they were going to be homeless because of a stupid decision. That they'd done everything for this family. I was inside. I came to the hallway just in time to hear him say my grandmother was overreacting, that she was being manipulated by me, that I was jealous of my brother and always had been. He said I had poisoned Sophia against them. I pushed open the door then. I asked my dad how he could stand there and act like the victim. He looked right at me and said we didn't think anyone would notice. That sentence broke something in my grandmother. She stepped forward and said, "You didn't think anyone would notice because you never believed anyone else mattered." My mother tried to speak again. Something about how they would pay the money back eventually, that it wasn't theft because it was still within the family. That's when my grandmother pulled a folded paper from the side table and handed it through the door. A legal notice. The eviction was now official. 30 days, no exceptions. My mom stared at the paper like she couldn't read it. My dad crumpled it in his hand and muttered that they'd talk to a lawyer. That this wasn't over. But it was. She shut the door. And locked it. After they left, my grandmother turned to me and asked if I would go with her to New Jersey. He had just gotten the call. The buyer had agreed to return the sapphire, for triple the price. He was ready to do it. I asked her why she was willing to spend so much just to fix what they had broken. She said because some things once taken must be restored in full, or nothing else in the family makes sense anymore. We booked the flight that night. But before we left, something happened that I never expected. My brother showed up alone. And what he said changed everything. He showed up the night before our flight. Just rang the doorbell like he hadn't vanished behind the silence this whole time. My grandmother was already asleep, so I opened the door. He looked different. Not smug. Not defensive. Just tired. He asked if he could come in. I didn't say yes, but I didn't stop him either. He sat down on the edge of the couch like he didn't belong there. Like he knew it. He said he hadn't known about the ring, not until after the honeymoon. He found out when my mother made some offhand joke about the trip being sapphire sponsored. He said it took him 3 days to work up the nerve to ask them what she meant. When they told him, he couldn't believe it. He thought they were exaggerating. Thought it couldn't possibly be that ring. But it was. He said he didn't say anything because he was ashamed. Because it was already done, and what could he do? Then he looked at me and said he knew he hadn't earned forgiveness, but he wanted to say one thing before it was too late. I didn't ask them to do it. And I don't want them near me either. He told me he'd moved out of their house 2 days earlier. Said he left them the keys and told them they were on their own. Said he was done carrying their excuses. He also said he'd been in contact with the jeweler. Offered to pay half to get the stone back. But Harlan told him it had already been handled. That it was returning to its rightful place. I asked him why he was really here. He said he wanted to tell Sophia the truth someday when she was ready to hear it from him. That he didn't expect her to forgive him. That maybe she never would. But he didn't want to disappear like a coward either. I didn't answer. I just told him to leave before my grandmother woke up. He did. The next morning we flew to New Jersey. The collector was polite but firm. He had bought the ring legally, but once he heard the story, once he saw the photo of Sophia wearing it at 15, smiling, unaware of the mess behind her, he agreed to sell it back. He said some things weren't meant to be kept in display cases. When my grandmother placed the sapphire back in Sophia's palm, back in its original setting, everything felt quiet for a moment. Sophia asked if she could still wear it. My grandmother said yes. But only when you feel strong enough to carry what it means. After that, everything changed. My parents moved in with a distant cousin 2 towns over. No one hears from them much. They sent a birthday card to Sophia that year. She didn't open it. My brother lives in a 1-bedroom apartment now. Says it's temporary. He sends postcards sometimes. No return address. My grandmother still tends her garden. Still keeps the folder with the ring's documents, now updated with a new note in her handwriting. Paid for. Never again. And the ring? It's in Sophia's drawer. She hasn't worn it yet. But she will.